He is considered the Rupert Murdoch of Hong Kong. He took over Mingbao newspaper from Louis Cha. His corporation runs 22 affiliates: entertainment, IT, culture, and real estate. Take a glimpse into the ups and downs of media mogul's career, only on New Money.
This is Yu Pin Hai, who is considered to be the Rupert Murdoch of Hong Kong. As the chairman of Nanhai Corporation Limited, this media mogul rules over a huge network of companies that covers hotels, a basketball club, as well as IT services, software products, and education companies. But it is his media empire that has made him famous in the business world. He produces and distributes movies like Confucius, Electric Shadows, and the award-winning film Echoes of the Rainbow. He has owned a digitalized television station and cable TV network. However, what he is most known for is his ownership of the famous Hong Kong newspaper Mingbao.
Well, sir, what a pleasure. At last I get to meet you.
Pleased to meet you.
In fact, they call you the Rupert Murdoch of Hong Kong. Of course, who is, I would say, by any reasonable judgment, the biggest media mogul in the world. Would you say so?
I think so. In terms of numbers, I think he is pretty big.
Have you met him?
No, we have not had that opportunity.
I've met him several times. And when I was reading about your life, I saw sort of a parallel construction. Because as you know, his father was in the newspaper business in Australia. And Rupert, as a young man, went into the same business and then expanded it. And then started buying papers all over the world, and then came to the U.S., went into television, and then movies. You, as a young man, I have read, when you were at university in Canada, started a little handwritten tabloid. Is that true?
Yes, that was when I was still in university. I was involved in the community paper. I started it. And then at the same time, I was working in the student union's paper.
So you've always had this, I've got the sense of Rupert Murdoch that although he's expanded everywhere, and of course Fox TV is extremely famous and Fox Movies, but I always have this sense that once a newspaper man, always a newspaper man, that there's sort of a passion for the written word. Do you agree?
I think so, but I must say that we are very different. And first of all, I don't want to make that comparison because Mr. Murdoch has been a very successful entrepreneur in media business. And the difference started, we have a very different background. He started in Australia with media industry that was growing all the time. And then he expanded into the USA and UK. And we in Hong Kong, the media industry is very, very small. So we have a very different background in terms of this. And so at the same time, his is a family business. And my father was a farmer, illiterate. Okay. So I think that's very different there. But most important of all is media as an industry in China has a very, very young experience. I'm sure you know that. And because of that, we have to have very different kind of skill in terms of to develop in this area. Hong Kong, when we started the newspaper business at that time, I acquired a pretty well-established newspaper.
That's Mingbao.
That's Mingbao. And the whole idea I had is really to try to use that and expand into China. But because the time was a bit too early, and it couldn't be expanded into it.
In 1993, Yu Pin Hai bought the paper from its founder, Louis Cha. Mr. Cha is a living legend in Chinese literature and journalism, who is best known and highly admired for his novels about martial arts. It's not an easy task to follow in the footsteps of such an esteemed figure, and Yu Pin Hai has had to bear the very public comments made by an unhappy and disappointed Louis Cha.
于平海当时他就说，我买你这个面包一定继承你这个风格，就你工作你讲做得好的你讲得好，做得不好一定不好，我绝对保证一定做这个，我就相信他了。 其实他也不是，他是一个，因为他现在这个人在想着还在，我不能讲他，但是我想他这一点都没做到。
Was Louis Cha, that's who you bought the paper from?
Yes.
Right? Was he really a mentor, a model for you of a newspaper man? Very much like Rupert Murdoch's father was to him?
I think Mr. Cha, you must understand, he has two identities. One is he's a newspaper businessman. The second is that, or should be the first actually, he is a very famous novelist. He is a very important scholar for modern Chinese literature. So when we distinguish these two, I have extremely high respect to Mr. Cha for his academic or creative achievement. But Mr. Cha and me, our relationship are mostly on the journalistic or newspaper business side. So I think we communicate pretty effectively in the past in conducting the business side. But of course, Mr. Cha is a very senior person, and we are from two different backgrounds. So obviously we have different kind of thinking or objective in how do we evolve.
When you took over the paper, lots of people wanted, it was very competitive, all the bidding, but he chose you.
No, let's put it this way. He first chose Rupert Murdoch.
Did he
Yes.
really? What happened?
That was in 1989.
Yeah.
He decided to sell it to Mr. Murdoch's South China Morning Post in Hong Kong. Mr. Murdoch talked to him personally. And but later on, the deal could not complete because of some disagreement on the financial arrangement. And then Mr. Cha decided he didn't want to sell to Mr. Murdoch, and he will list the company in public. And at that time, so in '92, he made an IPO on Mingpao. And after that, about 6 months or 9 months, he decided again he didn't want to manage the business anymore, and then he chose me.
Why do you think he chose you?
I think he likes to see some people that are enthusiastic about newspaper or journalism to take up the business instead of a businessman. And at that time, not too many people actually, local businessmen, were interested in newspaper.
Do you feel that when you buy a paper, or anything for that matter, and you own it, that you can do what you want with it? It's yours. Or do you feel there has to be an obligation to the previous owners?
No. As in terms of obligation to the previous owner, I would definitely say no. In terms of whether I have the total free hand to do it, I would say yes and no. Newspaper is not something you could just change overnight. Newspaper is something that's always a heritage, not just by the owner in the past, but also by the history that that paper was publishing in, at the surrounding of it. So Mingpao was representing a very important academic and highly educated sector in Hong Kong at that time, highly politicized. So Mr. Cha, in fact, he himself was subject to that sort of influence by that environment at that time. So when I took over the paper, I have to respect that heritage. So in that sense, it's no, I can't do whatever I want to do with it. But in terms of expansion of the business and all that, yes, I could do whatever I want to do with it. And as far as Mr. Cha is concerned, he may not be as expansionist as I was. Obviously, he decided to sell it. Of course, he didn't want to expand it. I decided to buy it. Of course, I want to develop it. So,
And you feel it was your right to do what you wanted with it once you had purchased it?
yes, but it doesn't mean I don't have to make any respect to the heritage of the paper.
No lack of respect.
Of course.
Of course not.
No,
Because,
definitely.
you know, Rupert Murdoch faced the same thing. He bought the Times of London. He bought the Wall Street Journal. When somebody comes in and buys a big paper like you did, they're on the hot seat, aren't
Yes.
they? It's just the nature.
It's just the nature. And also, like I said earlier, any newspaper or a media product, it carries certain heritage. And like what Mr. Murdoch did, even with Fox, with Time of London, with Wall Street Journal, I'm sure you know, there is just too much heritage there.
Of course, Marvin Davis owned Fox.
Yeah. So with all of that, you could understand there's a lot of burden.
So somebody like you, a media person of enormous success, when you buy a media product or you develop a media product, what you're effectively saying is it has history, and that's fine, and you respect that history. But then the future of it is your history to make.
I think that would be a good way to put it. But yes, it is a history that I have to take responsibility of, and it's a history that I have to make. But no history would be history without any regard to what happened in the past before this part of the history. So I think, like I said, I mean, people are free, but they could never escape the boundaries set by the environment and the situation you are in.